101 review. Book one is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the CEO and founder of EndoDNA. Of course, a fellow podcaster too, no other than Mr. Len May.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Welcome, Mr. Len. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, well, I am the CEO and co-founder, as you said, of EndoDNA. So I I'm also a polymath, an autodidactic polymath, and I can explain what that is as well. And EndoDNA is a platform for healthcare professionals that helps them make decisions using DNA, genetics, and epigenetics. So it's precision health and wellness. And I've been a coach for the last 20 years, sort of my side job, but it's something I enjoy thoroughly. And my focus has been working with people that have ADHD and helping them to reframe that as their superpower.
As a superpower for sure. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And hoping for more and more empowering advocacy to come. So today let's talk about the foundational concept or real world applications, challenges, and the future. So tell us, Mr. Lan, let's start with the basics. How you define precision medicine in a simple terms and how it's fundamentally different from traditional one size fits all approach to healthcare.
Yeah, it's a great question. And just, I want to also separate healthcare from sick care because that's the difference in at least the United States where I'm based. We're very, very good at acute care. And what I mean by that is if I have to get a surgical procedure or I have a fracture, we're excellent. The doctors are, wonderful at doing that. Some of the best in the world. But when it comes to chronic conditions, we have limitations. And those limitations include insurance and pharmaceuticals. So if I have a pain in my knee, the solution for that is I can give you a pill for that to help you take away the pain, or I can give you an injection as an analgesic to help you take away the pain. But it doesn't mean that that is the root cause of the pain. So it never travels to see what is actually causing that pain. And the cookie cutter approach to sick care is something that, we're challenging. And the way that we're doing that is it starts with your genetics, your DNA. So being able to look at your own DNA, where you get 50% from your mother, 50% from your father, that allows you to see what your genetic predispositions are. So if I kind of look at that as your GPS of life, it'll show you where your own potholes, where the traffic jams are in your own road. And you can take specific actions, which is lifestyle changes, to be able to turn on and off epigenetic expression if you know what you're genetically predisposed to. So, to give everybody an example, when we're born, we get our 50% of our DNA from our mother, 50% from our father. About 25% of them are in the on position. So think of it as a big circuit breaker with a bunch of on off switches. And, things like our hair color, eye color, skin color, that's turned on. But other genetic predispositions, we can make lifestyle choices to turn those on. And those lifestyle choices include things like food. What kind of food we consume? What do we put, in our what do we put in our stomachs and our bodies? And what nutrients. The second thing that actually affects epigenetic expression is exposure to things like pesticides, heavy metals, etc. And the third is our own neurochemistry. So, what neurochemicals are stress hormones, etc., that we excrete, and they can turn on or off epigenetic expression. So, looking at your genetics allows a healthcare professional to be know what you're predisposed to and what to address and what to avoid. So you have a much more personalized experience. In addition to that, you can then the healthcare profession can create a treatment plan and measure how well that treatment plan is working for the individual based on epigenetic expression. So doing like blood work, etc., we can see from baseline what has been turned on, what's been methylated, what's been unmethylated, and we can measure how well the protocol works. And with using AI and machine learning, now we can start making predictions. So somebody that's similar genetics to me, they've taken this protocol and a platform can learn and say, all right, well, this is something that works for individuals that are similar to that. And it creates a more personalized experience in health and wellness.
Interesting, Mr. Lan. And let's talk about your new book. Is this a new book that you publish?
This is
Making
a
cannabis.
Yeah, this is a Making Cannabis Personal. So this a book came out, a couple of years ago. It's a book that I published based on my life's journey and also what my business started working on. So we have a patent on the use of DNA to make recommendations associated with the endocannabinoid system. And the goal of the book was to describe to people that cannabis itself, where whether it's legal or illegal, is only a substance, a plant that actually works within a system that every single individual has that we're born with, which is our endocannabinoid system. And I think the separation of the two is really an interesting fact because the endocannabinoid system was discovered in 1992 by an Israeli scientist named Raphael Mechoulam, and he discovered it and it's our primary modulating system. So its goal is to regulate or what's called maintain homeostasis within your body. And the way that it works is it gets signals from the other systems and sends that signal up the central nervous system to your brain. And your brain makes a decision which neurochemicals, which endogenous, that means we produce them ourselves, it excretes to get that other system in balance. And the two that it uses are the first one's called anandamide. So the word ananda means bliss in Sanskrit. So this is a bliss molecule. And the second one is called 2AG. So when we are deficient in our own natural producing endogenous endocannabinoids, we're lucky because we found a plant in nature that actually binds to receptors that we have in our brain or our body and releases endogenous endocannabinoids, which is cannabis. The trick is it's getting the right ratio, the right amount, how much to take, also the right profile of that, the right method of consumption, and then measuring how well that works for the individual. So, making cannabis personal is my story where I got off prescription medication for my ADHD and started using cannabis as my medicine, and then creating the endoDNA, doing a DNA test for the endocannabinoid system, and working with lots of different people. It's got people's stories in there about how they've taken the wrong cannabis or how cannabis affect them negatively until they did their DNA test and have found the right ratio for them to address a number of different conditions like things like sleep, things like anxiety or depression, pain, and people were taking it for alleviating the symptoms of chemotherapy after cancer, etc. So that's basically the what the book is about.
Interesting book, Mr. Lan. Tailoring cannabis to your DNA. What is
Yeah.
the pivotal moment or insight that led you to connect personal genetics with cannabis use?
Well, so I was an owner and operator of several dispensaries in the Los Angeles area or Orange County. And one of the things I started seeing was two people will consume the same chemical variety and have a completely different experience. So I got into plant genomics. The first thing I was doing was doing genetic sequencing of the actual plant and starting to see that these names and these things we call them they're irrelevant. So we can see what the actual makeup of the different plants are. And the second part of that, I got into human genetic testing. So, what's something called pharmacogenomics, which is the study of how drugs affect individual bodies and also drug to drug interaction. And one day I had a light bulb moment and said, all right, we have plant genetics here, we have human genetics here. Let's bring those two together to guide people to a personalized experience with their phytocannabinoid use. And so we launched our company in December of 2017. When we met with the FDA in the United States, they asked us, what is the purpose of your test? We said to help people either avoid or mitigate a possible adverse event. And that's the overall goal. It's once you find out what type of ratio of cannabinoids and terpenes work for the individual, and cannabinoids are the genetics of the plant. The terpenes are the essential oils that the plant produces. They also give it its smell, and they have an effect when they work together with the genetics, with the phytocannabinoids. So once we're able to see where you're genetically predisposed to, what adverse effects you may have, now we can guide people to avoid those and find the ratio of cannabinoids and terpenes the more aligned with you. The second part of that, which is really important in consumption of anything, any drugs or any medicines, it's dosing. Well, how much do you dose? Well, one of the theories, one of the books that was written about dosing has to do with milligram per kilogram of weight. So how much you consume based on how much you weigh. Well, that doesn't make much sense when you're looking at the science of it because we all metabolize differently. So we have these series of genes, so called cytochrome P450, and I'm not going to hold anybody to the science, but they produce specific enzymes that metabolize different things that we consume. So there's a specific one for gluten, there's a specific one for lactose, and there are specific ones for the different cannabinoids. So once we understand how somebody metabolizes, now we can guide them on how to dose appropriately based on their metabolic function. And the last part of that is looking at products. So how do you know now you know what to take, you know how much to take, the next thing is where to get it. And the where to get it part is you can take what's called the certificate of analysis, the test result from product. We run that through an algorithm and we'll show you how closely that product matches the suggested ratio based on your genetics.
Based on your genetics. Interesting, Mr. Lan. The title promises to take the guessworks out. What is the most common and frustrating guesswork you see people dealing with the cannabis experience today?
Well, I think it's being able to find what works for them consistently. So the industry itself has inconsistencies on the product side, but also when you are guessing and you're going to, a dispensary or a pharmacy and you're getting your product, without knowing what it is that you're putting into your body specifically, you don't know what the experience you may have. So one day you may have a euphoric experience. The next day you may have something that makes you drowsy. The next day you may have something that makes you anxious. So once you understand your genetic predisposition to plant, now you can find products without actually going in and guessing what may work, what may not work. You can find products that are more tailored specifically to your genetic predisposition, and you can mitigate the expression of possible adverse effects, like some of the ones I mentioned. So, an example of that would be, a lot of people consume cannabis to sleep, but I'm not an alcohol drinker, but I'll try to use this as an example. When somebody takes too much alcohol, they physically can pass out and they're out and they're in a sleep state. They can be out for 10 hours. When they wake up, they don't feel good. They
Hmm.
don't feel well rested. And that's because your brain is not in that theta, in that really restful sleep. So with cannabis, same thing. If you take too much THC, which is the active ingredient, the one that gives you euphoria, it makes you feel quote unquote high. So that ingredient has a very narrow therapeutic window. If you take too much, if you take just enough, you can sleep. It'll work within the confines of your own chemistry. But if you take a little too much THC, and you can fall asleep, but the quality of sleep may be impaired because you're going to have active brain. So your brain is having that chatter, and you're going to be in your alpha state of sleep, never have that good recovery sleep. And if you're not getting good recovery sleep, it actually impedes your production of hormones, it impedes your circadian rhythm, and you can feel agitated during the day. And if you're not addressing that, you're on this hamster wheel. So actually, it affects your biological age over time if you're not getting that good quality sleep. So you need to make sure that you understand exactly what's good for you and what works within your own system.
So tell us, for the skeptic who thinks it's just a plant, how complicated can it be, Mr. Lan? And how do you explain that our individual biology makes one size fits all approach not just ineffective but potentially counterproductive?
Yeah. Well, so you're absolutely right. It is just a plant, but the plant has over 400 different components in it. So it's not just taken one single plant, it's taken what's called the entourage of that plant. So it has cannabinoids, which there's over 180 that we've already identified. The main ones that we know are THC, CBD, CBG, CBN, etc. Then there's the terpenes, which are the essential oils of the plant, and they produce it. There's its smell, like I mentioned, and there's flavonoids, which give it flavor. So the plant is very complex. It has a lot of different ingredients in it and a lot of the different components in it. And we're complex. We have a lot of different components to us. So being able to merge the complexity of the plant with our own chemistry, that's really where the difficult part is. But I also think that people don't understand how drugs work within the individual bodies. So to give everybody an example is I'm going to talk about cocaine, not advocating it in any way. I'm just going to explain how a drug works that everybody knows is illicit. Well, in the United States, cocaine is a Schedule II narcotic. That means it does have some medicinal purposes and it's prescribed by doctors. So it's prescribed by doctors for things like pain and analgesic and anesthesia. And, your dentist uses it and it's in lidocaine, a lot of different substances. So the way that it works is when you consume cocaine, cocaine binds to your dopamine receptors and it releases a whole bunch of dopamine into your brain and it blocks the reuptake of the dopamine. So your brain is very happy. It's getting a chemical, a neurochemical that is really addicting, which is dopamine, and it's getting a lot of it. Once there's a reuptake of that dopamine, your brain sends a signal back to you, say, hey, I'm going to reduce the production of my own endogenous dopamine, and I'm going to send signals that I want exogenous ligand, which is cocaine, so I can produce more dopamine. So it's not the cocaine that we are getting addicted or dependent on. It's the feeling and the dopamine that's being released into our bloodstream. And with cannabis, it works very similarly. You are taking the plant, you're consuming it in many different ways, combustibly, so you're smoking it, you're sublingually under your tongue as a tincture, you're eating it, whatever that is. It converts in your body and it becomes when it binds to your receptors because we have receptors for them just like dopamine receptors. We have CB1 and CB2 receptors. So CB1 receptors are located mostly in our brain and central nervous system. So when we consume phytocannabinoids, those phytocannabinoids bind to your CB1 receptors and release anandamide, which is the substance that I just talked about. That's our bliss hormone or molecule. And the second one, we consume CBD, it has an affinity for the CB2 receptor, which is located in our immune, digestive system, other systems within our bodies. And with that, it releases 2AG. And those are endogenous endocannabinoids that our body produces based on the plant. And when we are not taking something that aligns with us, we actually can have an adverse event.
Mr. Len, where do you see the future of personalized cannabis going? Will we see strain breeding or product formulation based on the genetics subgroups?
Yeah, I mean, breeding is already being done today. So, breeding and interbreeding and selective breeding based on genetics of the plant is happening now. Formulations, they're happening as well. We have 8 different patents on different formulations on phytocannabinoids that we license out to manufacturers all over the world. But I think the future is going to be twofold. On the medicinal side, you're going to be looking at compounding pharmacies. So you're going to be creating formulations or specific formulations for different conditions. So condition specific formulations. And then you have craft sort of cultivators, same thing as beer cultivators. You have your Anheuser-Busch, and then you have your special blend uh, of cultivators that are going to create specific types of blends. So it's just want to say it's not just about cannabis. Like our company has an endocannabinoid system report, but we also do precision health and wellness across other types of health conditions. So we have a female hormone health, we have a male hormone health, we have a cognitive health, nutrigenomics, skin. So the idea is to do whole genome testing and then provide reports for doctors to use for all kinds of different conditions.
What is the very step you recommend for someone who wants to stop guessing and start personalizing their cannabis journey after reading your book?
Yeah, I definitely suggest taking a DNA test. So you can go onto endodna.com and order a test. Our platform is for healthcare professionals, but the endocannabinoid system test still can be purchased by individuals. Once you purchase the test, it works like any other DNA test. So you would swab the inside of your cheek as a buccal swab. You register that, it's de identified. You send that sample to our lab. It takes about 14 business days from the time that it reaches the lab. You would log into your portal and you would get your results. The results look at symptomatic conditions that you're predisposed to. It looks at it's color coded green, yellow, red. And it looks at metabolic function for dosing, drug to drug interaction. And I'll give you some suggestions. And that would be the place that I would start with personalize your experience with phytocannabinoids.
And Mr. Land, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and mental health 101. Love letters in third season and Movie 101 Review, Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Len, if you could leave our audience with one key takeaway from making cannabis personal, what would it be?
That we're all individuals. However, 99.9% of us are identical. It's a 0.1% that makes us different. And in life, we keep looking for things that make us all different. We're looking for separation. But if you really look at our genetics, we're much more similar than we are different. So instead of looking at things that make us different, that separates humans from other humans, let's start looking at things that make us the same and similar, and then start focusing on those.
Mr. Len May, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your book, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so my book can be purchased on Amazon. It's called Making Cannabis Personal. I have a new book that's coming out. It's going to be on music. So I do something called Record of the Day every single day. So if you follow me on Len May Music, you'll see my Record of the Day, or on TikTok under Record of the Day under Len May. I also do a podcast called Everything is Personal. So it's all about interesting stories, personal stories of people. And I have my coaching practice that focuses on ADHD and polymaths and a connection between the two.
Yes, people support Mr. Len May because if you support him, for sure more and more empowering and focused you to come. So, Mr. Len, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Motica people, see you soon.